Thank you everyone for attending this presentation. So it will be about edit distances, string alignment, and dynamic programming. Thank you, François, for inviting me to do this talk. And I'd like also to thank Maxime Reynal, who has contributed to the slide. So this presentation presents the basics of string alignments, which is the foundation of what Maxime explores in his thesis. So this is something that I discovered this year. And so the goal of this presentation is to teach you how it works without regard you are familiar or not with this research field. So let's go. First of all, what is the problem? So I guess that most of you are familiar with this kind of tools who are used to compare two input files. And so the goal is to determine which part have been removed, inserted, or modified. So this kind of utility is, for example, built on top of diff under Unix. So here, for example, this is compare. But if you use Git, for example, when you run git diff or when you publish an update of your code, behind the hood, you are using this kind of tool. And actually, comparing two strings is a quite common task. And so you could find many use cases where you need this kind of primitive. So, for example, when you are doing approximate string matching, for example, you are using a spell checker, or you are doing a fuzzy string search or fraud detection. So you will need to find patterns that are close to a given pattern and try to find what is the closest one. And to do so, you require this kind of primitive. So according to Wikipedia, so I cannot necessarily fully give the detail about the other use cases, but you have also optical character recognition. In bioinformatics, you have all the nucleic and acid sequence and protein alignments. So when you want to compare two proteins, for example, so as you know, you will write later according to the nucleotide and see how it matches between the two proteins or the two ARN sequence. And it's also used in linguistics to compute the distance between two languages. So I don't know how it works, but this is what says Wikipedia. So as you can see, there is a very broad scope of application for this kind of primitives. So now let's explain how it works. So the basic concept is to build a distance on top of what we call edit operations. So the idea is to count the number of differences and rather to count the number of edit operations that are required to move from the left string to the right string. So among all the edit operations that you could consider, you have, for example, insertion. So, for example, in this example, I inserted X in the middle of A, B, C, D, E. You have deletion, so this is the converse. You have substitution, so you replace a character by another one. But you could envision other transformations. So this is a non-exhaustive list. For example, you have transposition, where you swap some characters of the string, and you could envision other edit operation. It depends on the distance that you consider. So in this talk, I will mainly focus on those 4 edit operations and mainly on the third first ones. So I will cover a set of distances. So the most famous one. So you have the Levenshtein. Oh, sorry, there is a H missing. So this is because the guy is Russian. So it's not the Germanic. So it should be SH, whatever. So you have the Levenshtein operation, which is, say, the most generic one. Damero-Levenshtein, which is a variation of Damero. So as you can see, you use the same set of edit operation, but you also enable the transposition for consecutive pairs of characters. You have the LCS longest common sequence distance, which only consider insertion and deletion. So I will, to explain all this framework, I will use the LCS because this is the simplest one. You have the Hamming distance that you might probably already know, which only consider substitution. But you have also edit operation, for example, Jarrow and Jarrow-Winkler. So I think I will just briefly cover Jarrow-Winkler, but it will be very quick. If you want more detail, I invite you to see on Wikipedia. It's not so complicated, but it's not the most interesting one, in my opinion. So some observation, just by looking this table and without entering in the detail of implementation of each distance, you can see that, for example, Hamming only supports substitution. So it means that if you have two strings, you could only consider two strings of same length because you have only the substitution. So if you have a string of n characters, you can only build using substitution another string of n characters. And that's why the Hamming distance only support the comparison of strings of same length. And for the other ones, Levenshtein, Dameron-Levenshtein, and LCS, as we have insertion and deletion, to compute them, we typically rely on a technique that is called dynamic programming that I will present in the slides. So, as I said, to present how we compute such distance, I will take the simplest examples. This is the longest common subsequence problem. So in this part, I will talk about what is the LCS problem, what is what we call the edit graph, which is basically a graphical representation of the way we compute the LCS distance. The corresponding dynamic programming model. So it will be the opportunity for me to present you what is dynamic programming. And finally, the main algorithm related to LCS problem. So first of all, some background. So dynamic programming is a technique of programmation introduced by Richard Bellman in the 50s. And the idea is that you want to express a problem where you try to optimize something in a recursive manner. So the idea is that you have a big complex program. For example, I want to compute a big LCS, for example, and I want to simplify this problem recursively. This is basically the idea. So what is important in dynamic programming, and this is the main difference between dynamic programming and divide and conquer, is that in this recursion, you might reuse some intermediate step. So, for example, assume that you consider a Fibonacci series. The definition is here below. Oh, sorry. If fi equal fi minus 1 plus fi minus 2, as you can see, at some point of the recursion, you might want to reuse f0, f2, f1, etc., as shown on the graph on the right. And because you want to reuse some previous results, you have to memorize those results. This is what we call memorization in dynamic programming. And so, as long as you have a kind of directed acyclic graph to model this recursion like this is dynamic programming. And by contrast, divide and conquer is you have a big problem, but the sub-problems are independent each other. This is, for example, what you do when you do sorting, for example, merge sort or quick sort, where you will split your list in small lists, sort those small lists, and then concatenate them. You don't reuse previous results. You just split the problem in small pieces that are independent each other. So this is the main difference between dynamic programming and divide and conquer.
Hello Marco. If I can add something, I may be wrong, but I believe that one of the main aspects of geometric programming is that it's not necessarily unidimensional. I mean, the example you gave, it was on M. It could be any type of space, discrete or even continuous. The just idea is that, like you said, you can go in the space in direction that eventually goes to a state that you masters, and of course, memorization.
Yep. So it's perfectly true, and I think it's also true in divide and conquer. So here the example is unidimensional, but as you will see, for LCS the space will be two-dimensional, and of course dynamic programming and divide and conquer could apply on any dimension. So it's not a problem of dimension; it's rather the way you architecture the recursion. Okay. I think it's okay.
Okay. I was on mute.
Okay. So now let's come back to edit distance, and more precisely to LCS1. So it was introduced by Meyer in 1978. So first of all, what is a subsequence? So this is basically you have a first string, say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and a subsequence is any sequence of characters that you obtain by removing an arbitrary number of characters while preserving the order of the character that you keep. So for example, A, C, E, F, as you can see, you preserve the order of the characters compared to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, where you just remove B, D, and G. So this is a subsequence. Of course, the empty word is a subsequence of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A, B, C, D, F, G is a subsequence of itself, of course. So now what is a subsequence, a common subsequence? So it's easy. You consider two strings, for example, ABC, ABBA, and CDA, BAC in blue and orange. And a common substring is just a string that is in the intersection of the subsequences of those two input strings. So for example, ABC, as you can see, is a subsequence of ABC, ABBA, and a subsequence of CDA, BAC. Now the LCS problem aims at finding the longest common subsequence of two words. And in this example, the longest one is CABA. And in general, you might have several longest common subsequence. It's not the case in this example, but in general, it can be the case. A very simple example, you consider that the blue string and the orange string are the same. No, bad example. You consider, say, ABA and ABCBA, and you can consider, no, bad example. So I don't have example. You can see, but trust me.
Anyway.
But there are, yes, and it's quite common actually. So now the question is that we have understood what is the goal of the problem. Now the question is, how do we solve this problem? So to do so, let me introduce what we call the edit graph. So this is a graphical representation of this problem. So here I consider my two words, X and Y. So I took the same example, ABC, ABBA, CDA, BAC. And I will build a graph such that each vertex corresponds to a IG pair, where I is an index of X and G is an index of I. So I will move from index 0, 0, which is the start of X and Y at the upper left corner. I will have some intermediate vertices, and at the bottom right, I have the vertex Mn, where M is the length of X and N is the length of Y. And so, as I can consider every pair of index ij, I have this kind of grid. And now the question is, how do I connect those vertices? And so the answer is written at the bottom of the slide. So I have three kinds of arcs: the horizontal one, the vertical one, and the diagonal ones. And so the horizontal one connects a vertex ij to ij plus 1 if I require an insertion operation. So this is always possible. This means that I progress on the string y, while I stay at the same position on the string x. Conversely, I could do deletion, so I move along the string y while I stay at the same place on the string x. So this is a deletion operation. So for example, if I move from 0, 0, I don't know if you see my cursor. Yes? No, yes. Maybe? Yes?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So if I move from here to here, this means that I consume the character A of the blue string, but I do not progress along the orange string. So this means that I insert the blue character. If I move like this, it means that I think it's the converse between insertion and deletion. So anyway, it's not very important.
It depends if you go from X to Y or from Y.
Yes, exactly. And so what is important is where you place diagonal edges. This is when you have a match between the two characters, the blue character and the orange character. So as you can see here, you have a matching character. You have a C here, C here. So beam, you install a diagonal edge here. And so you repeat the process. Whenever you find a pair of indices where the character is matching, like here, like here, like here, like here, etc., you install a diagonal edge. And this corresponds to a matching character, a common character, if you prefer, of X and Y. And so now you can guess that what we are trying to solve is a very particular set of paths inside this graph. So the idea is that I want to find the set of insertion, deletion, and matching operation that I need to move from one string to the other. And so as I will consider X and Y in their entirety, it consists in finding a path from this vertex 0, 0 to this vertex Mn. And so any path from those from this vertex to this vertex consists in a set of edit operation allowing to move from the blue string to the orange one or the converse. And so among all those set of edit operation, some of them are optimal in the sense of the LCS distance. And those paths are precisely those that maximize the number of diagonal edges. So another way to say to say this is that solving the LCS problem, which consists in optimizing, minimizing the number of insertion and deletion, is equivalent to find the set of operations that maximize the number of matching, and so is equivalent to find the paths that maximize the number of diagonal edges from this one to this one. So now the question is how you do so. And so the idea is quite simple. So first I will illustrate this idea of insertion of deletion because maybe it's a bit abstract so far. So I considered my blue string and my orange string. And here, if I consider this path here, I can see that to move from the string X to Y, I will remove arc AB, but I will keep C, and I will insert D, but I will keep A, etc., 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 which correspond to this path. And so the LCS corresponds to the green arcs. The insertion of operation corresponds to the orange arcs, and the deletions correspond to the blue arcs. And so here you can see that among all the paths that you could find between 0, 0 and mn, the path that optimizes the number of diagonal edge is this only one. This is why on this particular example, there is a single LCS, but in general, of course, you might have several paths optimizing the number of diagonal edges. And then to get the LCS distance, I just need to count the number of diagonal edges involved in the best paths. And here it's 4. And so the LCS distance of X and Y is 4. Is it clear so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So now the question is, how do we move from this graphic model to dynamic programming? And so it's quite straightforward. You will just express
Marco,
recursively.
do you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Just you said that there was only one pass. In fact, there are two passes in the Dart solution.
Which one?
You just because you have two
yes,
passes, it gives the same result. It gives the same result, but there are two passes.
Indeed. Yes, you're right.
So it was just a minor comment.
No, you're right. You're right. Indeed, you have this one here, and it leads to the same operation, and so you obtain indeed the same LCS with two different paths and the same results. That's right. Thank you, Ludovic. Okay. So now the question is, how do we express this in dynamic programming? And so it's quite easy. You will just express the cost of the LCS recursively and according to this graph. And so the initialization of the recursion corresponds to those vertices in purple. So the cost is 0 while while your cursor is on one of those vertices. So this corresponds to the first line of the program here. Then you have the diagonal edges, which correspond to matching characters. So this is the green arcs and the green equation here. So you just say that the LCS is the previous cost of the LCS. So here, I don't know why Wikipedia use a hat, but you could imagine that this is just +1. And finally, you have the horizontal and the vertical edges, so the orange one and the blue ones, that corresponds to the blue-orange equation here. And you basically pick the best solution among the solution that you have found here or here. And so it gives you the solution for here. Is it clear so far?
Actually, I've got a question. I don't get why you don't do a simple BFS / Dijkstra to have the answer, because instead of starting from the end, why don't you start from the start? I don't get why you do.
So it's a very good remark. And actually, you can use a Dijkstra algorithm if you want, if you are able to instantiate in memory the edit graph, because the underlying path algebra is a summering, etc. So it's compliant with the Dijkstra, and so you are allowed to do so. But in general, depending on the cost that you use, your dynamic program and your edit graph, rather your system of weights, might not be a summering. And in this case, in this kind of situation, you could not use Dijkstra. But for the particular case of LCS, if you are able to create in memory the graphs, the edit graphs, yes, you could use the Dijkstra algorithm.
Just a side remark, you never have to store the full graph to make a BFS or a Dijkstra. You just have to keep up with a front wave. So
of course,
it will be linear actually in terms of memory.
Yeah, you're perfectly right. And actually, this is what we do in Maxime PhD thesis, but this is not what they do in this work. I don't know why, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's kind of like you said, it's perfectly normal to start from 0, 0 and to build up to the end. So why trying to start from the end and go back recursively, except if it's just to introduce dynamic programming? Okay, but in that case, you can go both ways. So
no, you're right. So I think that the reason is twofold. The first one is that at the very beginning, when the LCS was conceived, the edit graph was not represented and in the mind of the guy who proposed to compute LCS as I shown. And so they decided to use dynamic programming instead of using a Dijkstra algorithm. I think this is the first reason. And the second reason is, I guess, that in some cases, not here, but for some distances, you cannot rely on Dijkstra algorithms because it depends on the cost function that you apply on your edges. And actually, in the most generic form of, say, LCS-like problems, you might have some weird weights where you cannot use this. So, for example, there is it depends also on the edit operation that you consider, but there is a paper in bioinformatics that consider some additional edit operations. And actually, the problem that they solve, they show that it is NP hard, which means that their dynamic program could not be solved using a Dijkstra algorithm, because otherwise P equal NP and you have a problem. And so this shows that depending on the dynamic program that you consider, sometimes your problem is polynomial and you could, for example, envision to use the Dijkstra algorithm, and this is perfectly the case here, and sometimes you cannot. But here, I definitely agree, you should use the Dijkstra algorithm. It's far more efficient. And to be very frank, you actually don't need to instantiate in memory the full graph. You can build it on the fly. Depending on the vertices that you visit, you could dynamically create in memory the out edges of the vertices that you are considering in your front line. And then you could envision to only build in memory a very small fraction of the graph. And actually, what we show in Maxim's thesis is that by doing so, with the edit distance that he designed, you explore. So it's for his distance, so it's not a general result, but in his case, you only explore 30% of the graph, which means that you save an incredible quantity of memory, because as you can see, the quantity of memory that you consume here is quadratic. So if your strings become large, it might start to consume a lot of memory, and so you don't want to instantiate the whole edit graph. Does it answer your question, Fabien?
Yeah, but like you said, if you just use a buffer, a BFS buffer, the memory will be linear. So
yeah. So I definitely agree. But it's it's even better, because what I said, because you do not require to instantiate the full graph in memory. It's not only regarding the buffer that you mentioned, but also the graph itself. So you can do incredible memory saving with this kind of tricks. But you will see this in the first article of Maxime. He will explain you this in his presentation. So I don't want to reveal all the tricks. It will be a surprise. Okay, so let's move. Now, how do we solve it with a program? So actually, here you have the program that corresponds to the dynamic program that we try to solve. So here the matrix C only store the cost of the best LCS, but you could save also the previous vertex that you used to reach a position ij to rebuild the LCS. So this is what we call the backtrack matrix. And if you read the Cormen, the LCS algorithm is presented with two matrices in tandem. So the C1, which keep tracks of the best cost at the position ij of the LCS, and the backtracking matrix B, which stores the predecessor used to reach AG. And so here I just returned the cost of the best LCS, but obviously you could return C and B to get the cost of the LCS and the LCS itself. Okay, so now I recall why in Wikipedia they use a hat. This is because here what they call LCS is the LCS and not the cost of the LCS. And here you just perform a concatenation of operations. So here you have a string, and here you have a single character. So this is basically what you would do with the backtracking matrix, for example, depending on what you want to store. Okay, so if you look at this program, you can see that the cost is quadratic. So the complexity is O of mn in terms of computation, and also in terms of memory. But as observed Fabien, you could, if you take some time to think, do memory savings. And in this particular case, you do not require to store in memory the whole matrix C. You could only store, depending on the way you do the recursion, the last row of the matrix I. Why? Because you only require the previous row. And so it's useless to keep in memory the 2 previous rows, the 3 previous rows, etc., etc. So basically what I'm trying to say is that when you compute, for example, the value related to the row 4, you only need the results related to the row 3, and you don't care anymore about the result that you obtained in the past for the row 2, 1, and 0. And by doing so, you only keep in memory the last row, and so the cost in memory is only linear instead of being quadratic. So this is a first straightforward optimization. And in the literature, you have plenty of optimization to do to compute more quickly LCS for 2 arbitrary strings. So if you are interested by this kind of optimization, you could look, for example, the paper presenting the threshold algorithm that shows how you could save some computation. Okay, so now I will talk a little bit about of related algorithms to the LCS one. So the first one is the Needle-Wunsch one. So it was designed in 1970. So it's a quite natural generalization of what I explained before. The main difference is that you want to answer a very straightforward problem. So far, I consider mismatching character or matching characters, and it impacts my the cost of my LCS. Now, what about if I consider that some characters are not the same but quite similar? And this problem arises, for example, in bioinformatics, where some letters, some nucleotides are similar. And so the idea is to slightly generalize the underlying cost function of your problem to take into account this consideration. And so it's very natural. When you have equal or similar character, you will build a diagonal edge, but depending on the cost, this is an exact matching or an approximate matching, you will install on the edge a different cost. So here, in blue, I denote I depict by blue arcs the equal matching, and by red arcs the approximate matching. And so in this example here, you can see that here we have exact matching. So this is T compared to T, T compared to T. So this is blue, A compared to A. So this is blue. And here, so the biologist says that T and G are not the same, but are quite similar. So I will install a similar arc, so the red one, and I will install a different cost on the red one, on the red arcs compared to the blue arcs. And so now the goal is once again to find an optimal path from the upper left corner to the bottom right corner. So now how do you proceed? So when you have a match, so you define first a similarity matrix, which returns for a pair of characters a cost. If it's a match, you return S of A, B. If this is a mismatch, you return the particular constant d, so usually it's negative. And then you try to find the cost that the path that maximize this cost. So if you want to use a Dijkstra, you just take the opposite, and then you fall back to a shortest path problem. So it's not a problem. And so now, how do you solve it from the dynamic programming perspective? So you will just slightly adapt the initialization step. So depending on where you are here on the first column or the first row, you will pay 1D or 2D or 3D or 4D, etc., etc. So this is what I wrote here. And similarly for this row, you will pay proportionally D time the cost. Sorry, J time the cost D. And it will initialize the recursion. And now the cost, so you adapt slightly the recursion. So obviously, when you have a mismatch, so an orange arc or a blue arc, you pay D compared to where you were. And if you take my previous green arcs, which correspond to the blue or the red one in this picture, you reuse the previous cost and you add the similarity, the cost of SAB. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, perfect. So as you can see, it's very straightforward. Instead of counting arcs, I just weight arcs, and this is the main idea. Okay, so now, so all what I presented so far compute what we call global alignment. So you find an alignment by considering X and Y in their entirety. And bioinformaticians are often interested by computing what they call local alignment. So you find the best alignment for any substring of X and Y. So this is what they call the best local alignment problem. And to solve this problem, they use the Smith-Waterman algorithm, which was designed in 1981 by Smith and Waterman. And so the idea is that you will once again slightly change your dynamic program to find such alignment. So you still initialize your Ci0 and C0J to 0, like in LCS, but to compute the cost of Cij, you will adapt the recursion by taking the cost of the cell I-1, G-1 if you have a diagonal edge, and by considering the best cost among all the cells on the top of your current cell and the best cost among all the cells on the left of your cell. And by computing this max, you obtain, say, oh, sorry, there is a typo here, say Cig. And of course, because the max is associative, etc., you don't require to iterate on the whole column and on the whole row. So this is just a slight variation of the previous algorithm, and often you will heard about Smith-Waterman because it's just it's more generic in one sense than the Needleman-Wunsch algorithm, but this is basically the same idea. It's just a slight variation. Okay, so now,
just a quick question. In terms of complexity, it's costly. Well, memory complexity.
Yeah, so this time it will be quadratic.
And in terms of computational complexity, it's quadratic, it's cube.
In memory and in footprint. It's O of mn, m times n, where m is the length of x and n is the length of y. So in memory and in terms of computation, it's O of mn.
For time also?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so now I will. So the time is going. So I will briefly cover some other distances, but now you have the main concepts in mind. So the Hamming distance that you might probably already know. Try to find the number of mismatching characters. So it's a particular case of edit distance, of course. So few examples. So if you compare Caroline and Catherine, you can see that the number of mismatching characters, so the red ones, is 3, and the subsequence is the green one. So it's better than a subsequence because here you want to preserve the position of the character. So K must be at the same position in the both strings. A must be at the same position in the both string. I, same, N, same. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So you look index by index whether the characters are matching. So K is matching K, it's green. A is matching A, it's green. R is not matching T, that's why they are red. Okay, so to compute the Hamming distance, of course, you wouldn't use dynamic programming because it will lead to a quadratic complexity. Here, you will just process in parallel, iterate on parallel on the both string and compare character by character the pair of current characters. And so the cost becomes linear. So it's significantly cheaper to compute. And of course, you can see that using this kind of algorithm, you require 2 strings of same length. Okay, so now you have the Levenshtein distance. So if you want the Russian orthograph, this is for Lyubov. This is written here. So this is almost the same idea of LCS, but a little bit more generic. So you find the initialization step. You find the diagonal edges, which is in green. So it's not exactly the same way to formulate the equation, but this is the same underlying idea. And you consider, once again, insertion and deletion that corresponds to the blue equation and to the orange equation. And also, you add another edit operation, which is the substitution. So you replace a character by another one, and it corresponds to the red equation. And so once again, you can compute the Levenshtein distance using a dynamic program. And this is actually what is done by the Wagner-Fischer algorithm. So I don't enter in the detail because this is exactly the same idea compared to what I presented so far. So Wagner-Fischer is a slight variation of Needleman-Wunsch algorithm. But you understand that this is the same idea. Sorry for, so here it was written where tail is the primitive returning the, so you just pop the first character, if I remember well. Yes, this is it. You just, you consider a string, for example, A, B, C, D, E, and tail of A, B, C, D, E is B, C, D, E. This is what is written here. And so here you just define the Levenshtein distance according to this primitive. Okay, so now you have a slight variation of the Levenshtein distance, which is called the Damero-Levenshtein distance. So it's once again almost the same idea. The main variation is this last equation here, where you authorize to swap 2 consecutive characters and adapt the cost according to this edit operation. And so this is what is depicted on this picture. Instead of doing orange arc followed by a green arc followed by a blue arc, you can use directly pink arc if you could swap those two characters. And so obviously the cost of this pink arc will be cheaper than this alternative path and this alternative path. So that's why you will encourage your program to take this kind of path. So this is the main idea of Damero-Levenstein. So as you can see, once you have understood how works dynamic programming and what is an edit graph, you can imagine plenty of edit distance, and you could imagine plenty of edit operation, and you could derive plenty of dynamic program. So then it's up to you and be creative, because it turns out that with a slight variation you get a new paper. So it's free. Anyway. Now, let's summarize what I explained. So just few remarks that are maybe important to have in mind. I talk about distances. It doesn't imply that those distances are metrics. So for example, Levenstein, LCS, and Hamming are metrics. So you have the symmetry, the identity, and the triangle inequality properties that hold. So those properties are here. But depending on the edit operation that you consider, and possibly depending on the cost that you might apply on your dynamic programming, you might lose some of those properties. And this is typically what happens for Damero-Levenstein and Jarrow-Winkler, which do not satisfy the triangle inequality, and Jarrow-Winkler do not satisfy the identity property. So you have to keep in mind that we talk about edit distances, but distance do not imply metric. And be careful, because in French, distance is what we call metric in English, and that's a common trap. Anyway. So why I talk about this? This is because depending on the algorithm that you might want to use, the algebraic property that you require might differ. So for example, you know that the Dijkstra algorithm requires a metric. Actually, it's rather a semi-ring. If you use some clustering algorithm, depending on them, you might require only a quasi-metric. But you have to be careful if you want to compute something that is correct. Otherwise, you will get approximate results, and you are not necessarily sure of the quality of this result. So to conclude, so what you have to keep in mind is that edit distances are widely used to check whether two input streaks are similar. So all of them are built on a set of edit operation combined with a cost function, and edit distances are not always metrics. So many edit distances are computed using dynamic programming, and dynamic programming is just a recursive way to compute something using an optimal substructure with overlapping subproblems. So this is what I represented with the DAG. If you remember the Fibonacci diagram, this is precisely this. Finally, when you compute an edit distance, the DP model is closely related to the edit graph. And so solving the DP model consists in finding an optimal path in the edit graph. And this optimal path reveals the best alignment and the best alignment score. And that's all. Thank you. So do you have questions, or it was so clear that you have no question? Hello?
Yeah, we hear. Here in the non-links, it appears that we have already asked our questions.
Okay.
I saw on Wikipedia so that for Levenstein, it seems that you cannot go below quadratic, whatever you do. Have you any idea why it's so complex? Why you cannot do the?
I think it's just a consequence of the edit graph because so I don't know if you are talking about the footprint in memory or something else.
Time complexity. But they say that you cannot go below 2 minus epsilon, whatever epsilon is. For the
I think that a possible explanation is that they might consider negative cost in their cost function, which it might be an explanation. Because actually you could compute, so you won't have absorptive cycles in your edit graph if you have a negative cost, but you cannot anymore rely on the Dijkstra algorithm because if you cross some negative arcs, you might need them and they might reveal an optimal path. And I think this is the reason why.
Yeah, you can't discard, yes.
Yeah. But it's a good question, actually. Now, of course, if you only consider positive costs on your Levenstein distance, I think that you could use a Dijkstra algorithm to compute it. And it would be, of course, once again, far more efficient. Another question?
Okay, so I guess we're going to thank Marco again.
Thanks, Marco.
Okay, so thank you to all of you. Thank you for your numerous questions during the presentation, and there was a very interesting questions. So thank you, Fabien, because I think you pointed the very, very good questions. So it was really nice. And actually, we faced exactly the same question with Maxime during his thesis. So it was very relevant to ask those questions.